Therapists of Reddit, what was your biggest I know I'm not supposed to judge you, but holy SHT moment? Okay, real therapist here. I got one. Some of my clients are shockingly bad at giving themselves credit, holy shit. Like they might get a nearly straight A GPA in a brutal major while battling depression, or overcome years of phobia, and get behind the wheel again, or write a literal novel, or raise a kid as a single parent with low income, or build new relationships after being burned, or cope with OCD well enough to hold down a job. And they'll talk about themselves, as if everyone on earth is better than them, as if their accomplishments are worthless. And I know it's because of depression or anxiety or another condition, but I'm often stunned by how differently I see them compared to how they see themselves. This has me in tears, because my therapist just had me write myself a forgiveness letter. I lost my wife, and I'm a single father, and I wasn't acknowledging that my grieving is just different than our societal expectations, and instead of criticizing it, I should tend to it. I also let these judgments affect my personality at times, and lead to it being put on others on occasion, which I took time to make amends with those that I felt I wronged. So, I wrote a letter to myself, as if I was writing to my best friend, and I was shocked as I wrote it at the amount of kindness and forgiveness I would given him. He cold done almost anything in his grief, and I would loved him, and waited for him to return to the best version of himself. Heavy shit coming out to that one. My therapist called me out on this a couple weeks ago. I was worried about my internship at school, and the lady running it told me that she was really lucky to have me working for her. When I mentioned this to my therapist, I told her that I wasn't sure if she really meant it, or if she was just saying it to make me feel better. She told me, I know you're probably not used to getting positive feedback in your life, but know that she didn't have to say what she did. She said it because she meant it. She's right. I'm not used to positive feedback, and it can make me uncomfortable. But sometimes you need to give yourself the credit you deserve for the hard work you're doing. Licensed psychologist here. As many have said, judgments really aren't part of the gig if you've had good training and spent time doing the internal work on yourself as part of the process. That being said, I don't think all therapists have done that, so don't be afraid to stop seeing one if you don't think it's a good fit. I often tell clients that I see my role as being a navigator, while they are the captain. I know I've been hired on to help plot a course from where they are to their goals. While I know a lot about the waters and landscape, psychology, human behavior, habits, etc., I count on them to be the expert on the boat and crew, themselves, their lives, important relationships. I don't expect them to take every recommendation or tool, because they may know things that I don't, and I respect that. My job is to just help adjust the courses needed to avoid obstacles, or deal with them when they come up. It's not my job to tell them how to live, what to do, or to judge them when they make decisions, even if those decisions are different than something we talked about. It's their boat. I almost always add though, if I end up suggesting 20 tools/courses and you take none, but then come in complaining about us sailing in circles, that becomes a different conversation. Still their choice, but I'll call out concerns when I see them, with as much respect as someone does when talking to the captain. Even that conversation is without judgment though, it's just about naming a process that you see occurring and seeking to understand what's getting in the way. I just wanna show up when some low effort text to speech channel covers this. I was once in my psychiatrist's office a bi-monthly, 15 minutes med check. She asked me what was going on more as conversation. I told her that in the last 6 weeks, my 3 elders, aunt and 2 uncles, I was guardian/conservator for had died one right after the other. My wife had a heart attack. My daughter attempted suicide. And my mom broke her hip and had laid on her floor for a week before being found. She drank and ate from the dog's bowls. I got that call within 10 minutes of setting up the last funeral. She stopped the meeting, got on the phone with a therapist in the office next to her, and had her postpone her next meeting to speak with me. I was so fucked up, I had no idea. I think she saved my life. not a judgment. You kind of train your brain not to judge because you are seeking to understand and help. When you do those things, you can't simultaneously judge. We could all use a little more of that in real life, I suppose. I'll share this though. I do feel concerned about this recent phenomenon of young people I worked with self-diagnosing, sharing, and identifying very closely with mental illness, as if the pendulum quickly swung from never ever share your feelings to OMG, you're depressed? All of us are too. Life's challenges can be tough, and they don't need a scientific sounding label to be valid and real. You are not your diagnosis. We can find validation and support in healthier ways. Edit. Thank you for the Golden Awards. And thanks to everyone for some really nice discussion. I have a really hard time with this. I know I'm not my diagnosis, but it was so incredibly validating when I finally heard the doc say major depression. It didn't happen until I was 30, and a lifetime of anguish made a little more sense. I can deal with the chemical imbalance in my brain. With that knowledge I can grapple with my illness, instead of with myself, if that makes sense. Though, in view of your larger point, I agree. People running around self-diagnosing doesn't really help if you're not getting appropriate assistance. On the other hand, I've heard a lot of stories about people who self-diagnosed quite accurately and had to fight to get any mental health professional to recognize it. Sometimes the label is exactly what we need, because it's right, and without it, we'd have all the same problems and none of the solutions. I work with youth and adolescents who have anxiety, trauma, and/or depression. Some of the kids I worked with had some pretty severe attachment issues. Regardless of this, I never thought I'd have to seriously explain. 1. You can't just buy a straitjacket for your kid. 2. Feeding your kid ultra spicy ramen each night instead of the meal everyone else is eating isn't specifically defined as abuse, but you have to understand the emotional abuse that this causes. 3. Your kid isn't trying to kill you because they stand in your doorway at night crying. That's likely because they are scared of their traumatic nightmares, but feel like you will just yell at them if they wake you up. Edit. Removed a phrase. Edit 2. Thank you all for your questions and support. This case has really helped to shape my approach to therapy and has highlighted the importance of healthy communication between parents and kids. My number one tip, don't let someone else tell you how you feel/think. If someone says, "You're angry with me," or something to that effect, ask yourself if you really are. If you're not actually angry, then don't spend a second more on it. A lot of kids/family members get hung up on trying to justify their own actions according to someone else's perception. Edit 3. Fixed straitjacket spelling. No, it's not a jacket for sexual orientations. Holy shit, number 3 is a heartbreaking image. I'm gonna go hug my daughter now. I work in mental health and have worked in acute and crisis settings for the majority of my career. The most notable event I experienced was when a young person had presented with significant ongoing suicidal ideation who was dealing with a lot of shit. I spent a lot of time with them, mostly de-escalation and working out what the plan should be moving forward. One of their parents came in a little while later, and I had the opportunity to speak to them about where their child was and what had been going on, with their consent of course. Midway through me trying to explain some of the psychological constructs and ways the parent could help, they said to me, "Is this going to take much longer? I have a show to go and watch." All I can say is, I never judge my patients. I have never walked their path or viewed the world through their eyes. But the people around them who perpetuate the suffering of the people I work with through ignorance, malice, and selfishness, I judge them. Edit. And a shameless one. I've tried to reply to as much as I could. I've enjoyed some of what I would assume is trolling and talking about some other people's experiences, as it's given me a chance to reflect on some of my own stuff. But I must go to bed. I'd like to ask one thing of anyone who reads this. Remember that you can help, even just by asking how someone is, or wishing them well. People who you think may be struggling, and even people who aren't. This year has been hard on us all, and I appreciate all of you who have said that those in care services have difficult jobs, but we have all struggled this year. Please be as kind as you can to each other, and I hope we can all look forward to a good December and even better New Year. Edit 2. My use of the word judge needs some clarification. I do judge in some ways. It's hard not to with what I see, who I work with and the situations they experience or have experienced. What I mean by not judging is that I do not allow my judgments to distort what I'm seeing or how I'm working, which will normally be to the benefit of the patient and those around them trying to help them achieve their goals and meet their needs. Wow. Some people just shouldn't have kids. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week she cancelled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy, which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. Therapist here. I don't think I've ever judged clients. My job is to understand them and their experiences and help them make the improvements they are ready to make. But I have very directly made my thoughts clear about choices, especially choices parents make for/about their kids. This probably comes off as judgment depending on the client's insecurity about the topic. One example was telling parents of a child I was working with a severe mood disorder that had made both suicidal and homicidal threats and attempts that it did not seem like a good idea to buy the young kid a gun, especially the week after the mother spent the session sharing her fears that the child would murder her. QMHP/C, soon to be LPC resident. Also, TW for sexual abuse. No shade to OP, but I wish the question was, mental health professionals, MHP, what has surprised you the most about human behavior? Because most MHPs really don't judge clients for what they say, but we do have holy shit moments. I'd say for me, my holy shit moment was when I realized just how prevalent sexual abuse in childhood is, and that sexual abuse is most often perpetuated by an immediate family member, for instance, parent, sibling, aunt/uncle, grandparent. So whenever I hear people say they don't believe so and so's story about being sexually abused by their parent, grandparent, etc., because that doesn't happen, it irks the shit out of me, to put it lightly. Op, you mentioned you're getting ready to start therapy. I know we are different, but therapy was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. It's good to have a neutral third party weigh in on what troubles you. And remember, you don't have to stay with a therapist if you don't want. Therapy, like any psychological treatment, is often more about trial and error to find what works for the individual than anything. Also, you'll get out of it what you put in, so be upfront, frank, and honest with your therapist. That will help them work with you on determining the best therapy course for you. I wish you the best of luck. I saw a new therapist that specializes in addiction. So he knows how to read the patient, and we laughed about it, but I told him my typical alcohol intake/back, and he just went, holy shit, how are you not dead? Results incoming. They are trying to not do a liver biopsy, if not necessary, cause I guess that has some nasty side effects. But we had a good laugh about that. He looked at my charts and was like, dude, you passed street tests at .42? I don't know how I'm alive. Not a proud time of my life. I now work in the jail and there are quite a few sex offenders in my program. I struggle with the ones who honestly believe their victims, as young as 8, were in mutual loving relationships with them. It's super difficult at times not to just say, dude, WTF.